So I'm out by the waterfront. Got a little bit of cabin fever. So it's 13 degrees outside and the wind's kind of blowing, so kind of got the hatches battened down. I was looking at the temperature this morning. It was 7 degrees Fahrenheit, and now I'm looking at the compost with seaweed. 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Hey folks, so it's been pretty cold. Last week we had the lowest temperature was like 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my gosh, there went a big old clump of snow off the roof. And then it was also like, in the teens during the day. But it was sunny out, but it was kind of breezy and actually kind of too cold to be outside and do anything. And then this week it's come up to freezing again, and it's supposed to kind of rain, I guess. So we've got a little bit of snow on the ground. I imagine it's going to get pretty slushy and stuff like that. But yeah, so I've been mostly inside, kind of planning for next year's crops. What am I going to plant and what am I not going to plant? And also doing my extracurricular videos. But yeah, I got to stay focused on this garden stuff. So yeah, the other cool thing is that Tyler got the metal frames for my new greenhouse, and then a friend bent those into the right shape for us. And so we'll probably put that together when it gets just a little bit nicer, when there's not a bunch of slush on the ground or whatever. So yeah, so today I want to talk about the plants that I am going to use this coming season and the ones I'm not going to do. And also then maybe I'll do a follow-up video later on talking about, where I'm actually going to put them in the garden. So yeah, I've got my little listy list here. So let's start by talking about greens. So as far as kale, I was really happy last number of years with the scarlet kale and the Italian kale that I planted. I'd also planned to plant a dwarf Siberian kale that I wanted to overwinter, but that was going to go into the expanded garden area, and I didn't get that done until way too late. And so this year, hopefully, I will have overwintered kale. That is the plan. And then as far as greens, salad mixes and stuff, the original plan was to do red leaf lettuce, frisee, baby spinach, and arugula. And what I ended up doing was doing four different kinds of Salanova lettuce, which worked great. And I decided that the green sweet crisp and the red sweet crisp, I think, are what I'm going to go ahead and do, because they kind of, yeah, they're not quite as delicate as the incised, the green and the red incised. And then I decided not to do baby spinach because this is the thing. The spinach bolts. I tried 2 different varieties of spinach, and they both just bolted so quickly. And then also, that might not be the worst thing. I would have just okay, make sure I cut them, and maybe I get just 2 cuts off of them. But the thing is, then I was having such pest problems. I don't know quite what it was, just eating them really bad. So what I have decided to do instead is grow a baby chard, and I'm going to try that this year. Eventually I'll probably do spinach, but I want to kind of try and keep things simple this year, because I've got to actually, the things that I'm doing, make sure I have my successions planted and get them harvested and sold and things like that. So I've got to really keep it simple. So no spinach. And then as far as arugula, it's a brassica, and so I have to make sure that I have it under insect netting because of the root maggot fly getting into it. And it didn't grow that great for me this year. Part of it was because my early plot, it was way too cold when I started that. And so all of my things were struggling to continue to grow. But also then the golden crown sparrows got in there, and because the arugula was the first to germinate, they kind of just ripped everything out. And anyway, I just don't want to bother with it. It's something I'll do in the
future, definitely, because people really like a spicy arugula. But I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to do just a greens mix, Salanova greens mix, and try this baby chard. I'm also going to do like a mature chard as well, but that's the plan for greens. And I'm going to focus on greens this year. I've got plans for a greens bubbler and a spinner, and that is something I've got to do good this year. So I planted parsley, both flat leaf and curly, and cilantro and dill, and I tried a couple varieties of the cilantro. So there's one that didn't bolt as quickly as the others, so I'm going to go with that cilantro variety, and then do some dill. And I was really happy with the flat leaf and the curly parsley that grew. They both grew really great. So I'm going to do that again this year. I pulled up some mint that I used to have in the community garden beds, and I've got some of those, and I hope to plant those in a container because they're really invasive. If you don't keep them in a little container, they just so I'm going to try and do some mint this year too, along with the other things, along with the other herbs. Okay, so roots. Carrots went really well, actually. The first, well, even the trial plot that I did eventually grew and was fine, but the second succession that I did grew really nicely. But then all of the things that I planted later in that really chunky rotted seaweed stuff just didn't come up. It just didn't germinate very well. So I've got to be way more careful about the condition of the beds that I plant into. But other than that, the carrots actually did really well, and I was really happy with the yaya. It tasted better. Both the yaya and the mokum grew great, but the yaya tasted better. And I know that Farragut Farm grows yaya, and so if they're doing it, I'm gonna do it. If you haven't seen my video about the Farragut Farm tour, take a look at that. I'll leave a link up above. And so carrots I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do radishes. And the variety of the three that I tried, the Roxanne was by far it germinated the best, it grew the best, and it had nice big round beautiful roots. And so I'm gonna do Roxanne again for radishes. And then potatoes. I planted some of those Magic Mollies, those purple potatoes that Peter Branson got. And so, I really like those. I planted them in stuff that was just way too dense, and they didn't do very well. I'm actually thinking about doing my potato plants outside the fence, to free up as much space inside the garden fence as I can for other things, because the deer aren't interested in eating potato leaves and things. So there was this one variety called Sarpo Mira that is kind of resistant to slugs, the potato variety, and I think it's only in the UK though, but if I can get a hold of that, I would be so happy. Otherwise, I'm gonna probably plant, whatever. If Peter gets a bunch of different types of seed potatoes again, I'll probably just plant kind of whatever he brings in, and maybe try them outside the fence of the garden. Oh yeah, and then I had talked about doing overwintered carrots, and so there was these two varieties, Giants of Colmar and Nectar, that I had wanted to try for overwintering, and so I want to get those started. I really want to try and have kale and carrots this winter, at least for part of the winter. Okay, I had talked about doing a small patch of celery. All the trial-y things, like little small patches of this or that I had talked about doing, I am not going to do that stuff again. I'm trying to keep things simple. So the other miscellaneous sort of things that I grew, well, sugar snap peas. And they did really great, except for I ended up with that, what looked like some sort of blight on the sugar snap peas. It probably didn't help that I kind of pruned the bottoms of them back and kind of opened that up to something, but I don't know. I didn't do a rotation, and so they were planted into the same area where peas had been planted before, so that was dumb. But that blight stuff can also be just in the seed itself. So I'm gonna get a whole batch of fresh seed for my sugar snap peas, and I will plant them in different location and hope all goes well. I'm also not gonna plant them as thickly. they just I think that there wasn't enough aeration going around through there too. That didn't help either. But the Super Sugar Snap Pea and the Sugar Ann are both really great. The Sugar Ann germinated really well and grew really fast, but the Super Sugar Snap Pea has a really nice pea, a really tasty pea. So I've got to decide, maybe I'll actually try so that I can actually see how they do compared to one another. I had planted them both together, so it was really hard to tell, what I was getting off of each type. So maybe I'll plant some Sugar Ann and some Super Sugar Snap separately. We'll see. So I'm definitely doing those again this coming season. Oh yeah, and I did green onions. Primarily, I wanted to grow those for the restaurant in town because she had asked about having green onions, and they don't really ship well up to here to Alaska from down south. And those did really well. I was so surprised. I thought they were going to be a pain in the butt, but they germinated really great. They grew really great out in the garden. I just needed to be able to keep planting successions, getting them out there, harvesting them when they were ready to be harvested, and all of that. So I'm going to do those again. As far as the greenhouse, I did basil in the one greenhouse, and so that's one of the reasons we're building another greenhouse, is because I want to be able to do rotations. So I'm going to rotate my basil to the new greenhouse for this coming season, and then in the one I had basil in this last season, I'm going to plant mini cucumbers, the ones that have like real thin skin. And oh my God, I'm a little bit nervous about that. But I think it's gonna be a disaster because I want to trellis them, like Farragut Farm does. And so we'll see how that goes. So yeah, that's the plan in the greenhouse. I had talked about doing like a little patch of cherry tomatoes. I've done cherry tomatoes in the past. It was a disaster because it was a really cold year. But so doing a small thing of cherry tomatoes and also doing some hot peppers. I'm not going to even try and bother with that. So yeah, just basil and cucumbers in the greenhouse this year. And so this is the other thing. So as I was looking up how to deal with cutworms and slugs in a previous video, they talked about slugs and stuff not liking leeks and onions and garlic and fennel. So I have grown leeks before, and they do quite well here. I've grown them from seed, and they'll, oftentimes by the time the season's coming to an end, they're still kind of smallish, but I would bunch them together, almost like bunched green onions, and so that worked great. So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and, in addition to the green onions, plant leeks along one of the borders of the garden the slugs are just gonna probably eat the leeks, whatever. I never had problems with pests and leeks that I can remember. So anyway, that's the plan. I'm gonna add leeks to the mix, and I think that is it. Except for I have decided in the new expanded garden area, because I didn't have anything planted there, so I didn't have any pest problems there, I am going to put in dwarf white clover, because I've done that before in a garden that I had before, and it improved the soil so much with the nitrogen fixing plants, clovers. So I'm going to go ahead and plant that new area and intersow or underseed, whatever you want to call it. I want to underseed clover with the other crops. That is the plan.
Okay, people. So these are the metal aluminum frames.